One of the things that's important to me is investigating crimes. Right now, the sheriff's office has a limited staff, and so they investigate very few crimes. I intend to increase that number dramatically. And one of the ways that I want to do that is by training the deputies on how to be the detectives. There's a big difference in city law enforcement and county law enforcement. In city law enforcement, a law enforcement officer shows up to the house, he writes a report, he takes it back to the police department, he turns it in, it gets assigned to a detective, the detective does a follow-up on the case. In county law enforcement, the deputy that goes to the crime scene is the detective. He or she needs to know how to do all of the investigation, how to collect the fingerprints, how to process the crime scene, how to write the police report, and how to testify in trial. And that's what we do in county government. And like I say, I was in the sheriff's office for 18 years, and I did those cases from the beginning to the end. We didn't pass those off. And so we want to train our deputies on how to be the detective. We also have a lot of retired law enforcement officers in Josephine County that have been coming to me wanting to volunteer, wanting to help. And they want to be our CSI, former homicide detectives, that will team up with our deputies to make sure that our deputies know how to process a scene, how to investigate a crime, fingerprint specialists. So I'm really looking forward to the volunteer opportunities, which is one of the things in the bottom right corner, volunteers. A county like ours with limited resources relies heavily on volunteers. Gone needs to be the day when you call the sheriff's office and nobody answers the phone. And you get a message that says, sorry, the sheriff's office is closed. There's no excuse for that. And I believe that with proper volunteers and the right staff, we can have somebody answering the phone at all times.
Can I add a comment that they made to me one time?
Sure.
I had a home invasion, and I was told point blank, we do not, nor will we, roll or investigate a home invasion.
So part of that is just training and experience and management. I want our deputies to be trained to be able to handle any kind of case, because we know we have very few of them. There are not a lot of deputies. So the deputy has to be able to handle whatever kind of call he gets. We had a saying when I was in the sheriff's office, it's one riot, one ranger. And I would get a call on my radio, and it's a very big county. And it would take me sometimes an hour and a half at code 3 at 70, 75 miles an hour, shooting out the freeway to the outer ends of the county before I'd even get to the scene. And then I would have to take care of it. And I had to know when I got there how to take care of it. And I had to have the equipment in my car when I got there to take care of it. So that all comes down to training, and that's one of the things that I want to do as sheriff, is make sure that all of our deputies are properly trained in how they need to respond as a deputy sheriff. Reserves, right now in Oregon, reserves have an odd status compared to most other states. California and Arizona, a reserve officer can be an officer who was certified by the authorizing authority, in this case it's the Department of Public Safety, and they can keep their status even though they're not a paid law enforcement officer, as long as they're sponsored by an agency and they volunteer and they keep their certifications up. And so I've got a lot of former officers that have come to me that want to volunteer with the sheriff's office. And so those are the programs that we're working, and I'm working with legislators in Salem to try to get some of those rules changed so that all those officers can keep their certifications, and then they can also back up our deputies and respond and take care of some of these evidences. And then posses. Lots of people want to be on a posse. They want to volunteer and do things. I give the example of our fine deputies out in Cave Junction. They're busy. They arrest somebody in Cave Junction. What do they do with that prisoner? They have to drive that prisoner all the way into Grants Pass and book him into the jail. Well, if we had a posse that was the jail wagon posse, we could dispatch them to Cave Junction. They could pick up the prisoner. They could transport the prisoner back and book the prisoner, leaving the deputy 10-8 in Cave Junction, or mobile in Cave Junction, to handle the next call. and not take him out of service for the hour and a half or the 2 hours that it takes him to drive to Cave Junction and come back. So lots of volunteer opportunity. That's really big in my agenda, and having something for everybody. We'll do the same interview process, the same screening. Depending on what they're applying for, they're going to have to do psychologicals and polygraphs. We're not going to put a vacation watch posse together of people that are meth heads and heroin addicts and tell them where you live and that you're going to be out of town on vacation. So there's some serious screening that's going to go on in who volunteers and what they can do. I've got people that just want to answer the phone. And that's why I say that we will have people to answer the phone. Jail services. I appreciate the fact that the citizens approved the levy. That takes a great burden off of some of the other finances. There's now money to run the jail. But we still need to run the jail efficiently and effectively. Those people that need to go to jail need to be taken to jail. But we need to make sure that we spend only the pennies necessary to run the jail and not anything extra. And the nice thing about the jail levy is it's dedicated to the jail. So if, for example, we only need $5 million to run the jail this year, and we have a $7 million budget, we get to take that $2 million and put it in a jail reserve so that we have it for future years. So when the levy runs out in 4 years, hopefully I, as your sheriff, can tell you we've put this much money away. Do we need more money? Maybe we do, but maybe we don't need 93 cents or 97 cents or $1.04, and I'll be able to show you on paper what it costs to run a jail for a year and what we need to do.
It's fine, Dan. Good. Is everybody all right? Yeah. Sorry, it was really, really hot.
Sorry. That's okay. That's okay. It's your meeting. People ask me, why do I want to be sheriff? I love law enforcement. I did it for 18 years plus 4 years in the United States Air Force. I love Josephine County. I grew up here. I own property here. My family has lived here for 3 generations. They don't plan on going anywhere anytime soon. I just retired from my day job. I'm 57 years old. I'm too young to be retired. So I need to do something with my time and my talents, my experiences, and my gifts. And the best place for me to do that, I feel, is in your sheriff's office. You need somebody who loves the job, who has the talent and experience to do the job, and I feel that I'm the best candidate for that. I don't know how much time, if any, I have for questions, so I'll defer to...
Yeah, plenty of time. We started early and got through everything, ripped through the whole agenda.
Okay.
I
So-
got a question.
Okay, let me give this young lady her brochure back in case she...
Are you gonna end the catch and release program for the criminal element?
Okay, I understand what you're saying. I'll tell you one thing about it, and a lot of people don't understand this, and this isn't me or Dave Daniel. We don't have that control. I believe that every criminal needs to be caught, and every criminal needs to be taken to jail. What's important to understand is that the district attorney's office has a jail release officer. The jail release officer sits down with everybody that's arrested and decides if they're non-bondable, bondable, or OR. That person decides who gets out of jail. So I can arrest all the bad guys all day long, but if the district attorney says release them OR, the sheriff doesn't have any choice. He has to release them. So the catch part is on law enforcement. The release part is really out of our control. Who gets released from jail is who the courts and the judges say release them from jail.
Because the criminal element doesn't have any compunction against breaking the law because they know they'll get picked up, they'll go to jail to be released right away.
Right.
And they'll go right back to what they were doing.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that it doesn't matter who your sheriff is, whether it's Dave, I, or somebody else. We don't get to decide who gets let out.
I mean, that's a serious problem, needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
Because it must frustrate the law enforcement to catch these
It
bad
does.
people and arrest them, and then they see them the next day and they're doing the same thing.
Chief Landis told me that very same thing. His officers work hard, they arrest people, and the very next day they're out there. But yeah, we have to work with our district attorney's office, and whatever the release conditions are that the judicial system has set, that's outside of the scope of the sheriff himself.
Will training of those officers in detail of reports help that situation possibly?
It can, if the law enforcement officer, I've read several reports, and they scare me, the detail that's not in them. If a law enforcement officer writes a thorough police report outlining what happened, the court release officer is supposed to look at that report. So if you say that he burglarized the 7-Eleven, the court release officer looks at it and says, okay, he committed burglary, but that's not really that big of a deal. So they might release him or set a very small bond. But if you say he broke into the 7-Eleven and he pistol whipped the clerk and he stole $5,000 worth of cash, and you outline the seriousness of the offense, then he says, okay, it's a physical injury crime, it's a high dollar, which moves it up from a misdemeanor to a felony. So you have to write a report that has all of the details in it the first time around, and that helps again with the prosecution. We have a saying in law enforcement, and you have it in other business, if it's not in the report, it didn't happen. So when you roll up on a scene, you need to describe from the moment you got there. I arrived on scene, I saw a broken window, there was blood on the ground, I saw the clerk, he was holding a towel to his head with blood on the right side of his face. You need to describe all of that, because you've got to paint the picture for the court release officer, the prosecuting attorney, and ultimately one day for the jury. And you can't make that stuff up when you're on the stand and say, oh yeah, well, I forgot to put in my report that he beat somebody, and I forgot to put in my report that when we impounded his car, we found 13 guns in the trunk, and you've got to have all of that in the report the first time. You guys are making it really easy. Vivian.
I want to know what you think your greatest talent is for being the chief law enforcement officer for Josephine County. What is the greatest talent you have to contribute to that? Just one, just name one.
Yeah, there's a couple of them, but the most important one, I think, is my gift and talent in administration. My 30 years experience in management and leadership. Your current sheriff is a nice guy, no doubt about that. He stepped up when he felt the sheriff's office needed leadership, and I appreciate that. But what he brought to the table was 18 years of patrol officer experience. What I bring to the table is 30 years of management, leadership, professionalism experience. So that's a big difference. We can allow the sheriff to continue on the job training to learn how to be a good manager and a good leader and see where that takes us over the next 4 years, or we can elect somebody who's got 30 years of that and can hit the gate running. Paul?
Jonathan, Dave, I was just told, is not calling ICE whenever he has MS-13 or illegal alien criminals. And so in other words, he's going to release them out on the street even though they're dangerous criminals, because he's not going to call ICE. Will you call ICE?
Okay. The sheriff's office had a contract with ICE for beds that expired May the 31st. They didn't renew the contract. All the reasons for not renewing the contract, here or there. If it's within my authority and my power, working with the county commissioners to renew the ICE contract, I would do that. My problem is, you arrest anybody, but you arrest an illegal for that shoplifting, for example. They go to the Josephine County Jail. They go through the process. They serve their time, their sentence, whatever the court says for the crime they did. The moment their sentence is done, under the current administration and the way it works, is the jail door gets opened up and the illegal immigrant is shown the sidewalk out there by Walmart and said, go out and have a nice day. That's not acceptable to me. Under the ICE agreement, ICE would have a detainer on that individual. I would be able to call them and say, their time in Josephine County's hotel is done. Please come and pick them up and take them to your own. And we would hold them, and I think the newspaper report from the sheriff's office said 3 to 5 at any given time. we would hold them until ICE came and picked them up and took them to their center to process them accordingly. That would happen under
What
my
happens
watch.
if the DA's office would say you have to let him go? Like they did in San Francisco with Stein's case.
The sheriff doesn't work for the DA's office. So the DA's office doesn't tell the sheriff what he can and cannot do.
But then how come they tell you that you have to let the prisoners go if you got too many in there?
That's different. You're mixing apples and oranges. The sheriff's office sets the release conditions for non-sentenced inmates. That's the first one. The other ones we're talking about, after a prisoner has served his time, he's done with the DA. He's now the property of the state or the sheriff's office. When he's done with that, he's now a free man. The DA doesn't have jurisdiction over that body any longer after he's sent him off to serve his sentence. At that point in time, he's an inmate in the Josephine County Jail until his sentence is served, and then he's released, unless he has another warrant. Say he has a warrant with Jackson County Police Department. DA can't tell me to let him go. I'm going to hold him in my jail until Jackson County comes and picks him up and takes him to Jackson County to serve their time. ICE is no different. I'm going to hold him until ICE comes to the jail to pick him up to take him to serve their time. So there's a difference in sentenced and unsentenced. Mike?
Yeah, I have a question, kind of a follow-up to that. If these are serious criminals and they've done some serious crime, and we take them in, why should we spend money to hold them in the jail till their sentence is done? Why not just have ICE come and get them right there? You know?
And a lot of people have asked that question, but it's really important. Let's just take the scenario, the fictitious scenario we've been using about shoplifting at the 7-Eleven. If it's an illegal, the easy thing to do is say, let's save our money. We won't house him. We won't prosecute him. We won't waste any money. We'll call ICE and have ICE take him away. But is that fair to the owner of the 7-Eleven? They don't get their pound of flesh, if you will. They don't get their day in court. They don't get their opportunity to seek restitution. So we deprive our citizens of their due process if we circumvent it and just say, we're going to send him off to ICE so we don't have to spend
The
any
guy
money.
doesn't have any money anyway to give them
Yeah,
7-Eleven back.
what's the guarantee that he's going to be compensating the store owner?
There is no guarantee. He probably never will. But
And
the
I'm
store
not
owner
saying
has
not
the right to
prosecute.
it.
I'm not saying not prosecute him so that he has a criminal record, a conviction of said crime. I'm just saying, why should we pay if that's something that's likely to get him deported? Why not just call up ICE and say, come get this guy?
Because we'll be back in about a week.
Yeah, he has to have his day in court. And if ICE comes and gets him, they will deport him or release him. He will never come back to Josephine County to stand trial, and he has the right to face his accusers and be present in court. It's the whole judicial process. So we don't want to circumvent that by getting rid of them before they've done
No, I
their due
think you missed
process.
what I was saying, because I was saying, let's go ahead and convict him. Let's go ahead and get that, but then call them so that we're not spending money to keep them in the jail when ICE could take them.
Then I think we're on the same page.
Okay.
Once they've done their county time, at that point, say the judge sentenced them to 7 days time served. At that point in time, he's done with Josephine County. At that point in time, he comes off of our dime. I've picked up the phone, I've called ICE. Immediately now, ICE is paying the per day housing fee to keep him. If they say, we don't want to pay it or we don't want to issue the detainer, then we let him go. But then it's on ICE that we let him go.
And that would likely be due to the severity of the crime that he committed.
ICE takes almost everybody. They don't care what the crime is. They will take almost everybody.
Look at my plate.
I'm sorry, over here and then back to you.
What I wanted to ask, and I'm not gonna put you on the spot, but one of the actual issues that we really do have with law enforcement is we need to come up with a permanent funding solution. I'm not putting you on the spot for that question. What I do wanna ask is, if you get elected, would you be willing to put together like a task force to actually work it? But in this case, add citizens to it. One of the problems I wanted to get involved in seemed like only law, and I'm not picking on law enforcement, but only they were gonna be allowed to kind of work this issue. And we still don't have a permanent funding solution. So in 2-3 years from now, you're gonna lose your funding.
Yeah, I don't have it in here, but I have spoke on it before about having a citizens advisory committee that will help direct the sheriff's office in its move forward in the plans that it needs to make. And that's working with our county commissioners, whoever they may be, so that the county commissioners prioritize, and they've done a good job at it, but we need to work with them to prioritize the mission of the county and the county government and the county budget to what is most important. And if we feel law enforcement is most important, then the county commissioners need to work with us to make sure that the budget for the sheriff's office is the most important. And right now, it's played with a little bit. We need to be serious about our budget. We need to know every year it costs X number of dollars to run the sheriff's department. First thing first, priority is to make sure we have that budget and then move on. So for example, the jail levy. When the jail levy runs out, we're gonna be short $7 million. So we need to, before the jail levy runs out, figure out where that $7 million is gonna come from. And if it's gonna come from another levy, heaven forbid, then we need to make sure the voters know well in advance that the only way we're gonna survive where we're at is we're gonna be looking at a levy, and if we don't get a levy, but in order to go to the voters and do that, you have got to be crystal clear where every penny comes from and where every penny goes. And we're not crystal clear in this county.
But you are right, there's a lot of people, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Dave told me he's gonna get the money from the marijuana growers.
Okay.
Oh,
Your turn.
Good luck on that, right?
Yeah.
Good.
I understand the levy passed and it provided much needed funds for the jail. And I also understand that you took the initiative to go and delve into the county budget and the sheriff's budget and found out that it was quite confusing. You know, we don't mind paying for protection and different things, but we don't want our money wasted. I think we waste so much money that I'm not just really eager to pass another levy unless the money is really accounted for and spent wisely.
Thank you. So the budget, she talked about how somewhere I posted is confusing. If you go to my website, you'll find that the county had Public Safety Fund 12. Public Safety Fund, they just renamed it because they thought that public safety confused us because the city of Grants Pass has the Department of Public Safety. So we weren't smart enough to figure out what public safety was, so they renamed it the Law Enforcement Fund. Okay, it has the sheriff's office in it, definitely law enforcement. It has the district attorney's office in it, they're not law enforcement. It has juvenile justice in it, they're not law enforcement.
that probably on the animal.
So renaming that law enforcement fund was not. As sheriff, I will work with the county commissioners and the budget committee to have a sheriff's budget. If they want to lump all the other stuff together in Fund 12, that's fine with them. But I want you to know the sheriff's income is $4.2 million and the sheriff spent $4.2 million. Then you get the detailed budget that's way down there on the bottom of that page that tells you how much is personnel and how much is toilet paper and all of that kind of stuff. Animal control is the same thing. Animal control and animal shelter, I don't remember the fund number. They're in the same budget, but the sheriff runs animal control and some health department, I think, runs the animal shelter. So they need to be in separate budgets. The jail levy created the jail budget, but juvenile justice is also in that. So we need a sheriff's budget, we need an animal control budget, we need an adult jail budget. And you need to be able to look at how much money goes in, where it comes from, and how much money goes out. It's simple math, and in doing my budgeting for the Salvation Army, I know it's possible. What they're doing is fair accounting standards and principles. It is acceptable, but it's not best practice. So you got two departments that have two different missions run by two different administrators in the same fund. It looks like, and I'm not saying this happens because it probably doesn't, but it looks like funds dwindle in and out of each one of those programs. So draw the line, put one on one piece of paper, one on another piece of paper, and you'll never wonder. Judy.
And you know, Jonathan, that just makes everybody in their departments more accountable. When you have everything mingled and meshed and it's all foggy here and whatever, you don't know where, the citizens are frustrated, just like you were saying, we were frustrated because you don't know where the money goes. But when you can itemize things and the public needs to know where that money goes, then if you have your departments, then everybody can be held accountable. But that wasn't my question.
Well, I'll
What
come
was
back
the
to your
question?
question, because I want to say one other thing.
Okay, no.
Since you hit that, the sheriff made the proposal of what he wanted to do with a $1.2 million SRS. And one of the things he said he wanted to do at the county commissioners meeting is he wants to hire an additional district attorney. Why in the world does law enforcement hire district attorneys? You know, why the sheriff would want to take any sheriff's money and hire a district attorney? Because the problem you have when you do that is when law enforcement hires the district attorney, you expect the district attorney to rule your way. Just like if a judge were hired by the prosecutor, you would expect the judge to rule. So we have the separation of the executive, the legislative, and the judicial branch for a reason. And law enforcement should not be paying the salaries of the prosecutors. And frankly, if we've got money to pay for a prosecutor, we've got money to hire another deputy.
And the prosecutors are supposed to be
So
paid
Judy
by
had
the
a
state.
question, and then I'll come to you, and I don't know how much time I still have left.
They are.
You've got a few minutes.
Okay.
Two.
I just wanna kind of fast forward, because we never know where, Jonathan, where the budget's going with our society, going AWOL on us on a lot of things. Where we used to be in the 50s, we're not there in 2018. What I mean by that, because there was a sheriff back in New Mexico or somebody who said, just, you can make more, you can build more jails as long as you know what the education department's doing. So if kids are coming out of the educational department, I'll give you a little highlight on this. And-
Well, I only have 2 minutes, so ask your question, please.
Read it right, whatever. So I'm thinking, how can we work with you so we can cut down the crime? Because I feel like the crime's gonna be getting more and more pronounced as our education system keeps going down and down.
Well, that's multifaceted, and I think school resource officers can help out a little bit about that. But I think our major crime isn't our school-aged children. Our major crime is our meth and our heroines and our opioids, and we've got to figure out how to fix that part of our society. We need to work on our kids, but I think right now the drug culture is far more important and more serious on our financial impact.
When the jail's overcrowded, are you gonna set up tents like Joe Arpaio?
Honestly, our jail will never be overcrowded. We have a jail capacity of 262. I cannot believe, even though the levy allows for us to fill it up, I cannot imagine that we would ever fill up our jail. I'm hoping that through crime prevention and working with the drug problems and things, we can keep our jail bed count low.
How many
We'll
are
put
funded?
everybody that needs to be in jail, but I don't think we'll ever get to the point where we're arresting so many people in Josephine County that we'll ever have more than 262. Yes, Vivian.
The question is, how many beds are funded now? But the background of that is, when they built that jail, and I've got this from historians that, in this county, they had a great big campaign to build the jail, to get the levy, to get it all, to get it on the tax rolls. And they said that they would be able to rent out beds to Medford, or to Jackson County, and to ICE, and they would rent all these beds out, and it would be a profit maker. That was how they got the taxpayers to vote for that and put it as a permanent tax on your tax bill. Now, that's what makes me believe you can't believe anything government says.
The capacity of our jail is 262.
Yes.
Today, the number fluctuates between 125 and 155, depending on what's happening down there. As they get more officers in the jail, staffing can go up. There's a ratio for every, and I don't know the number because the sheriff's office won't tell me, but for every X number of prisoners, they have to have one corrections officer. So if they're at capacity for 150, they can't put anybody else in the jail until they hire another employee. So one last question, then I'm done.
I'm glad to hear that your strength is in administration, because in any successful business, there's a wheel, there's a hub. And you can't just focus on one of the spokes. You need to, focus on all. So it's important you focus on, are you buying 1-ply toilet paper or 2-ply toilet paper? Where are you buying the food? Is it the cheapest? What kind of shampoo are you giving the inmates? All those little details are part of that hub.
Right, and that goes back to, the budget part of it, again, goes back to my days at the Salvation Army.
Right.
7% of their donated dollar goes to administration. 93% goes to where it's needed. And as your sheriff, I will take your $7 million for the jail and your $4 million for patrol and stuff, and I will spend it where it's best serving to the community. And where it's not needed, like the 1.2 SRS funds, if I don't need it all this year, I want to reserve it for the years that we don't get SRS and we don't get ONC and we don't get a jail levy. We needed to start years ago saving money. We never did. We need to start now. The current administration is not saving money. I will start saving money. Thank you. That is my time. I'll be around afterwards if you have any questions.
Big round of applause for Jonathan Knapp. Okay, and we have our current mayor of the city of Grants Pass, Darin Fowler, and he's running for county commissioner, and he's got to follow Jonathan Knapp, so this could be fun.
Yes, do you all want to keep facing that way? Pretty comfortable with that?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I could stay over there.
No, the camera's up here.
Another good reason to stay over there? Well, I am Darin Fowler. I am the mayor of Grants Pass, a re-elected mayor. I'm in my 5th year. And I grew up in this town. My parents moved here in the 70s, 1970, when I was 4 years old. And my wife's parents moved here in 1970 when she was 4 years old. But we didn't know each other till the First Baptist Church parking lot in between 6th and 7th grade when we were heading off to church camp. And we ended up going out a few times and then getting married, raising a family here. And she went to South, I went to North, but we both ended up at Grants Pass High School. And I love this town, but boy, when you grow up here, it's like, I got to get out of here. You know, graduated in '84, and please let me out of here. And so I learned how to be an electrician from my future father-in-law, and went to San Leandro and then San Diego and learned how to be an electrician, and came back up and got my license in Oregon. Found out they were paying more in Oregon because they have a licensing system when California didn't then. And so I could make more money in my own hometown. Man, that sounds great. I bought the house across the street from the one I grew up in. Had kids when I was young, so they went to the same schools, and some of the same teachers were still there. So it was very small towny, and we really enjoyed that. Coached soccer, taught Sunday school. But then I found myself yelling at the Courier newspaper and yelling at the television.
Oh, we've all done that.
And I know some of us have to be more careful now than we used to be. But and then I got involved in church leadership. And then one of the guys there, I blamed Tim Cummings for a lot of my involvement in politics, because he's the one that first said, hey, you should go try this. And I got on the Rural Planning Commission and then the Urban Planning Commission, and then I was on the City Council right after the recall, and then a re-elected City Councilor. And then I think everybody else stepped back and I became mayor, and then got re-elected mayor. So I've really enjoyed the last 10 years of volunteering in politics. It's what I think about all the time. But when I was 33 years old, 1999, I started my own contracting business, my own small business, which, come to find out, is very American, that entrepreneurship where you're like saying, I'll do this for this much money, and you don't even sign contracts. You just shake hands and say, all right, we'll do it. You know, we'll put in that paddle fan or whatever. And it was really fun. But then you see how much taxes you pay again. You start yelling at the Courier again. You start yelling at the television. Start yelling at the federal government, going, what the heck are you guys doing taking all this money? Why do you need it all? And then when you start looking, you really get frustrated. And you go, all right, I'm going to get involved then. And so I did, and I've enjoyed it. I think God has given me some gifts that have been nurtured in that. And I kind of came to a crossroads. I'm 52 years old. Do I want to be an electrician the rest of my life? Maybe hire some more employees, grow that business? Or do I want to follow this politics vein that has been so exciting for me? And so I decided to follow it. I decided the county commissioners were finally getting to a place where more people trusted them than not. So we passed a levy. Same with the sheriff's office. We seemed to pass a corner there, which all of you know was really tough for us as a county and as a city. I mean, the city contracted to buy jail beds in order to help keep the jail open, for instance, and to protect the citizens and visitors to our city, which is many of course, the county residents come in to do their business and run their business and spend their money here. And so we made it through some really tough times, and it produced some good leadership. You know, Lily Morgan and Dan DeYoung came from the city council, and I think Simon Hare, despite some obstacles, has really proven himself to be a good administrator. We may not agree with everything, but thank God he was there for some of those times when there were candidates next to him that were not administrators. And I was able to help guide this county through some difficult times. But as you know, the political atmosphere is very challenging. And I was fortunate enough that I don't have a lot of baggage behind me. I was an electrician since 1999, or since 1984, but my own business since 1999. So I got to meet a lot of these people in the county, in the city, business owners, see what makes them tick, see what they care about. And I'm excited about this next step. I think our county, like I said, has built some trust, but we still have so many obstacles in front of us, so many bridges yet to cross, and so many ideas kind of hitting the pan, if you will. So many different groups, because we got this new gang green, the green rush that we're trying to manage and trying to be good neighbors and trying. I think the commissioners could have done more and at least adopted the minimum standards that Jackson County had so that we could at least stop the expansion of grandfathering in. There's so many now that grandfather in because they haven't changed or enforced the codes, that it's going to be, okay, all of you but those ones, you know, that were already there, you can still do whatever you want, be a bad neighbor all you want. And so we really have to draw a line somewhere and say, hey, no more of that. And then if you're going to be in gang green and make money off of our region, then you need to pay your fair share. And that doesn't mean a direct tax, although Dan DeYoung was working on that, at the plant tax, but that's hard to do without hitting the wineries and hitting the raspberries and hitting the other small businesses. You can't just pick winners and losers. I think we really need to go after the state's revenue. They took in well over $70 million that first year on dispensaries. And of course, Grants Pass Josephine County doesn't make that kind of money off dispensaries because everybody already knows a guy. And so you don't go to the dispensaries unless you're a tourist here, or maybe in your 50s or 60s and feeling nostalgic about, I don't want to go in a back alley and buy it from a guy. I'll go buy it legit. But all this revenue up north, we need to be fighting for that for our own law enforcement, because they're creating the problem that is in our backyard. So they need to help pay for it. And I just look forward to this county rounding this corner. Like someone said earlier, when you were here back in the sheriff candidate was back here in the 70s, that this was a sleepy logging town with pizza and beer joints and pickups everywhere, you know. But we have really grown from there to a hot community in Oregon that has got the good tourist opportunities. We're the hub of Southern Oregon. We got the best place to do your whole camp. When you want to come down and spend a week, you can go see Shakespeare, you can go see Crater Lake, you can go see the redwoods, the caves, the coast, go South Umpqua. You can do it all from Grants Pass. And so we're poised to be that next hot spot, and our businesses will all prosper because of that. And if we can get some of this smoke out of our view that seems to be here every year now, and I know there's some fighting going on with that, but there needs to be some more outside of the box thinking. I heard something the other day that at first I kind of scoffed at, but now I'm kind of thinking, what about that? And they were saying, what if you put ground rods on top of all these mountains as lightning rods and let it go where you want it to go instead of starting a fire anywhere? And what if it only cut a third of them, or what if it cut a half of the fires? That'd be something. And I'm like, okay, what sounded silly might actually turn into a project. For those same firefighters that are hot now and working too long hours in bad conditions, maybe in November or February, they can go put in some ground rods on some of these mountaintops, and let's stop this every summer. And so I'm looking forward to those kind of out-of-the-box solutions for us, because we have an opportunity where the funding has gotten stable for a while. And I say we're off the bottom. We're not fully funded, but we're off the bottom, and we're building trust again. As a commissioner's office, as a sheriff's office, we're building that trust over again. And it's fragile and needs work every day, every week. It needs someone who's ready to get up in the morning thinking about it and drive it all day long. And I think I can be that commissioner. I've enjoyed doing it for the city of Grants Pass, and now I think this county challenge is exactly in my alley, and I really want to take on that challenge. So I'm looking forward to it. And that's my history and thoughts about where we're at, but I'd be happy to answer a few questions if you'd like. Yes, ma'am.
You're a city boy. You grew up in the city.
Right.
You live in the city. How can you tell me that you're going to be an effective county commissioner when you're not out there? I'm out
Right.
there. And If you add to that county commissioner line, everybody's a city commissioner. That doesn't do us any good out there, because you don't have the neighbors that we've got. You might go out there to run the river, but you don't live out there with that.
That's a really
Well,
strong
and my
feeling.
my in-laws lived in the county for 30 years. I lived in the county for 3 years when I first moved back here from San Diego, but I was really too young to pay attention to what the politics were of that. But Grants Pass is uniquely tied with the county. We are not our own little island, and the problems that people have in the county are just a little bit different. They aren't that unusual. And so all it takes is a person that has leadership, is willing to solve those problems. And I don't have a vested interest in anything in the city except where I own my house. I'm not looking for big developments for anybody. I'm looking for your property rights as a property owner to be respected. I'm looking for your county to represent you with safety first and not a bunch of other stuff first, but safety first. And so those kind of principles are transferable from any organization. I don't have to have a vested interest. My opponent also lives in the city and has the same setup that I do, that he lives inside of the city. But I don't think Grants Pass is like San Francisco or Portland or Salem. I think Grants Pass is very uniquely tied to the county, and we all share those problems because they benefit us both. We're so unique with that one city in this entire county that we have to get along together. And I think that that relationship has been neglected over the last 30 years from city to county, that we don't do anything together. And we're finally starting to do some things together: economic development, emergency management. I thought there was one more, but we're doing some things together. And so I think it's easily transferable, but I think that's definitely an obstacle. You've identified the one that I think is my main obstacle. But the problems are just different, but they are still similar. They have the same solutions. You have to go to the state government, you have to go to other counties to gather support, and you have to fight the federal government when it makes sense. Just a different pool that you're playing in than whether it's a city and the county. And so as a city, we're well aware of what our county has gone through because we are so integrally tied in our daily lives, in our business, and in our politics. So I do appreciate the question. Yes.
I think that the levy came along not because of a reestablishment of trust of the commissioner's office, but because there was going to be a dead cutoff, no money, period. And that's what made people vote for it. But I'm concerned that, in terms of keeping trust and reestablishing trust, you can't do that by adding employees like there's no tomorrow, which seems to be the case at the county.
Yeah.
We had a cutback to the 2012 level where we had a couple hundred plus employees, and now we're scheduled to be over 400 by next year. And I don't remember lamenting that, boy, there just isn't enough county employees to give me the services I need. I know that government wants to grow bigger. Why is it that we always want to do more instead of doing less?
Right. That's a pretty nutshell statement, because that is the difference. Us Republicans, I am a registered Republican. I call myself a thinking Republican. I'm not way out on the edge swallowing everything, but all my main principles start in the same place. And unfortunately, our country is divided enough, and it seems like we lost the battle we forgot we were supposed to be arguing about, which was bigger government, and government should take care of it. Because it used to be when the bridge went out in Weimar, a bunch of neighbors would get around, they'd find the guys that had the logging trucks, and they'd fix the dang bridge. But now everybody yells at the government, "When are you coming to fix our bridge?" It's like, well, it takes $3 million. We're not sure if we have it. Well, okay, next year when they do fix it, it's $4 million. It's like, man, we got out of that mentality over the last 20, 30 years, and it was the wrong direction. And finally, I think Republicans will come and say, hey, we need to get organized and start being not only a part of the conversation, but start leading. And that's part of what I think happened at the city council when they got all recalled. I think it's what happened at the county leadership. We weren't getting the good candidates showing up. That's why Dan and Lily got elected, because they had some proven leadership. And yes, they were from the city, but I think we're seeing locally a lot of change in direction on that. Now, as soon as people get in there, they can start thinking, okay, now I'm on this side and I have to protect this pool. And that is the wrong mentality. They forget what representative government is. And that's representing what your values are, and not what mine are. And I've learned that working in politics, that it's not what I want. I'm not ready to die on every hill because that's my personal love or feeling about it. It's representative, so I have to gather the right information, find the solution that works for the most people, and then implement it in a way that makes sense so that it's defendable. So when you have a levy that passes and you're working under that new money, then the next time you're going to ask for money, whatever that looks like, you've got the whole track record of proof of what you did, why you did it, why it made sense, instead of, well, we decided to try this and it didn't work, or we did that and it didn't work. It's like, no, you're losing trust immediately as soon as you do that. And so now's the critical time to build that trust so that when the ask comes again, whether it's larger, smaller, or the same, it has to be defendable because of your record. And I think that's what people that get into government forget quickly, is that, hey, in my business electrically, I have to be accountable because I'm a sole proprietorship and every dollar, every penny I save is mine. And so it should be the same way in government. Every penny I save is trust that's going to help me do better on the next subject, and the community's going to go, okay, at least they're thinking, they're showing that they're thinking, and we can see that they're not wasting money. And it's hard for people to get involved and hard for people to watch government do badly, but I think we're seeing that change even in our national government. Finally, boy, what a battle he's got on his hands of deep state. But it's the same mentality in the government. Well, I see it in the city all the time. They want to make more money than everybody in the private sector. And I'm all, when did that happen? When in the heck did that happen? That should be a good job with okay benefits, and you should be good at your job. It shouldn't be like, well, the manager of the shopping cart or whatever is getting this much, so I need this much more because I have an important job. And it's like, man, has that got out of hand? And they start ratcheting each other up. I see it in the firefighters union and other labor negotiations that you're like, man, how did we get that far out of control? The PERS thing. Like, what the heck happened? But our community is awesome and it's worth fighting for. That's why I got involved, because I think we can fight that back. And it takes time. Boy, you can't win in 6 months. You can't win in 1 month. You can't even win in a year. It just you got to sustain that fight forever to win those fights, because they take years and takes inroads. And so, and I think I can do that. I think I've learned how to do that.
To that end,
Yeah.
are you for or against putting Simon Hare in the position that he wants, which is a permanent county administrator?
Right, I think the people decide that. I'm not. I'll put it up for a vote, but I want to see the particulars. I want to see the particulars first, whether we put it up for a vote, because I've heard he's had a couple of plans for this, and I don't know if our county's ready for this, and I know it might undercut my career change of 30 years of being, and I might get elected commissioner, and then there might not be a paid commissioner spot. But I think it's whatever's best for us. I know that in a business or in a church, anything with 3 heads is a freak. That's hard to handle. How do you get 3 heads to agree on anything when they can't even talk outside of a meeting? And so it's just weird, dysfunctional thing that I don't know why it's in place, but we have to work within the framework we have. When the proposal comes up, I think we should be smart about what we offer.
If Simon Hare was the county administrator, would that free you guys up to talk? If there's 3, I don't.
Depends on the structure, but if there was 5 low-paid commissioners or whatever, or a volunteer board like the city council and a paying administrator, I think that could work better than the system we have. Of course, it always depends on who the advisory board is, who the administrator is. I don't know that. I kind of think that Simon's primed to move on to somewhere else. I think he might have did good work here and learned a lot, but it's time to go play for some other team. And so I'm not for a quick turnaround and putting him right in a spot like that. But if a new system makes sense, then let's put it to the voters. Charter change, do it. If you guys like it, you guys don't. It's not up to us. We can say we favor this or that. but it's still up to the people first.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
what you're saying is that would be a public vote.
Right, be a public vote, absolutely. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to know, how could Simon Hare keep his job after going to a strip club, getting intoxicated?
Well,
ramming
I guess
a
there's
police
4
car?
strikes in some
Anybody
games. I
in
thought there was
private
3.
business would have been fired the next day.
Well, it's the Bill Clinton syndrome. Even Donald Trump has a record of not being faithful, I suppose, is a kind way
This is a
of
little
putting it.
different, though. This is
But-
like law breaking.
Not
I know,
while in
and,
office.
but it's acceptable in America. And so some people can overcome
Not
that.
here.
I mean,
And-
I voted for the guy, and I was ashamed that I voted for him.
And I get that. I totally get that. But he somehow is a survivor. There's a little Teflon there, apparently. And so I don't know the explanation for it, because I certainly had my frustrations when the second and third instance happened. But it's up to the voters. So here we are. We got an election coming up, and he
Questions back
decided
there,
not
Steve?
to run. So I agree. Yes, sir.
Darin, Lily Morgan and Simon Hare got elected because of Jim Brumbaugh, pastor, went to all the churches and they prayed with him, and he got all the 7, 8 churches together and they got him elected. Is Jim Brumbaugh helping you as well to get elected?
I've met with Jim, but I don't know if he's helping me, if I'd say that yet. He's not on my committee or anything. I have met with him, and I respect him. He's got a lot of knowledge of our county and of politics. But I didn't know that he was involved in, did you say Lily Ann Dans or Lily and Simon?
I don't know about them, but I know Lily Morgan and Simon Hare positively, but
Right.
I'm not sure.
I think
And
he'd be a
also,
good ally, but I don't.
Also, the guy that was running the Gospel Rescue Mission, Keith Heck, he got him elected.
Yeah, I just know Jim, but we're not friends. I've only met with him a few times, and he seems to be a nice guy.
There's 2 questions in the back that have
Oh,
been waiting
yep.
a long time.
If you get elected,
Yes, sir.
will you continue to be mayor?
No. I'd resign on January 1st and let them appoint a mayor. There's 5 seats up on the city council, and I didn't want to put the mayor on there too and make it 5 + 1. And so too big a turnover. I wanted to let them appoint for the remainder. Yes.
I want to go back to the Republican platform, say you're a registered Republican, and go back to what Mike Jones was asking you about. You know, in our platform, we believe in smaller government. We believe that the people, the citizens, want breathing room, and they want to be able to spend their own money. And yet, we see, and I go to all these meetings, we see time and time again that they're always hiring somebody new. Now the latest is the emergency management person, and then they're going to have assistant. That's $80,000. You know, to a community that was harping about a few years ago that we didn't have any money, whether it was Keith Heck or whatever, we don't have any money, we've got to watch it. Then all of a sudden we've got all this money and we're giving these people. And what really bothers me here is that when they hire this person, they say they don't give the requirements. They don't even start with, we have a need for that. We go back to a need. We don't get the stats. We don't get anything. All of a sudden it's an emergency. We need it, and we're hiring him. We're thinking about today, and he's on the agenda. Boom, that's it. That isn't the way private businesses work, because you're in private businesses, and when you need all the whys. Who says we need to hire this extra person? Who says that we have? Because I've been in the commissioner's office or in the department there, in the finance, and the guy's just diddling. He's got a computer, he's got no papers there. He's just, playing tiddlywinks. So I often wonder, like, if your company wouldn't have somebody just sitting there doing tiddlywinks. I wouldn't.
Right.
Because it's not.
No, I couldn't afford that.
Financially productive.
I don't even get to play
So my point
tiddlywinks.
is that we're looking, all of this, and I think, speaking of a smaller government, but you don't get a smaller government when like Michael says, you go from 200 some employees, you have 400. What are they all doing out there? I think we need to have a real accountability that this person does this. I mean, even when we go to the commissioner meetings, get a little excited here, but we're scooted out. I mean, that's our building. And even at the commissioners meeting in the Vasquez, it's like, you gotta go, you gotta go. Well, wait a minute, I thought we were the employers. So I just have a feeling that we need to know exactly why you're hiring, we need to know in advance, and we need to know all the whys. We haven't been getting whys for a long time, Darin.
And
They're very
I think
secretive.
people,
They don't want to be accountable.
Very long time.
for whatever reason, people think they elect someone for public office and then they never talk to them again and hope you do a good job, and you read in the paper what they do, and it's like, no, wait, that's not the way it should be at all. It should be the relationship with the voters. You should be going to every city council meeting in Cave Junction. You should go to the town council meetings out in Williams. You should be, one of the commissioners should be at all of those things, and I don't think they are. I saw the list. There's a huge amount, but that's the job. And the job is information gathering so that when it comes to, should we have this employee for emergency management, here's the reason. Because first of all, we don't have a plan. First of all, the plan hasn't been touched in this long. And I know the city is actually coming alongside, and we're going to share that now. Instead of have two separate emergency plans, we're going to go back to having one so that we can not only help the county, but have one point of contact as well. And so I think it's just that whole idea of smaller government. Like I said, the guys would replace the bridge because it needed replacing. Now we're waiting for the government to do everything, and that's wrong. I mean, just like the South Y, the off-ramps and stuff is mown by ODOT. So you get some poor schlep out of Medford driving a truck and trailer over here who doesn't care about Grants Pass, who parks on the side of the road, does a crappy job, and goes home. His ODOT benefits are intact. He's plenty happy. That's not how you do stuff. You contract that out to a local contractor who is proud of his on-ramps, and he puts his little sign in the corner, and he goes, yeah, I did that. Doesn't it look great? Instead of this stupid employee that works for the state that has a dead-end job in his mind, like, I'm probably never going to be boss here, so I'll just keep showing up. And ODOT gets so large that, hey, we have a funding problem. It's like, because you have too many trucks and you've tried to do too much. You should have been contracting out so you could be nimble with the rest of the economy. And now they're stuck with, well, how are we going to do anything? It's like, hey, you got yourself in this problem. How are you going to expect us to bail you out when you can't even prove that you can run an organization like that? And then you've got snow plows that come out a month or two a year and then sit there all year long. Whereas the logger would put another attachment on there and that'd become a bulldozer or it'd become, anything. And he'd use that thing all year round. And so that's what happened. We weren't watching the shop. Government got too big. People's expectations of what government would do got different and changed to where we argue about it all the time, and it should have never gotten that far. Government was not supposed to be taking care of us. It was supposed to be making sure everything was fair and that everything was safe.
Darin,
Besides that, that's it.
I have two questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, two questions because I don't want to put my hand up again. But anyway, but the first question is, I bought a piece of property about 3 acres on the corner of Hamilton and Smoky several years ago.
Mhm.
And on the 12th of November, the date that I signed the papers on it, it got annexed in from the county. It was county property with low taxes, and it was a piece of junk. Judy's my neighbor. She knows what it was like. It was filled with trash, and then I couldn't keep the vagrants out of there because the lady that owned it lived up north, and I couldn't keep the vagrants out of there. They started a fire, almost burned the place down, and then it was just left this heap of burn and trash and burnt trees. So I bought it, and I had it cleaned off, and it cost me $20,000 to clean this place off.
Sure.
And now some nice little deer live in there, and some foxes and some raccoons. And it's a nice little place to drive by, and the neighbors like it, and Judy takes the deer
Well,
some
get to the
apples.
point.
The point. Oh yes, the point is I bought it, but
That's
the
her
day
job.
that I signed the paper, it was annexed. Half of it was annexed into the city, and the half that was annexed into the city went from being $600 a year taxes to $1,300 a year in taxes, and I didn't see any improvement in my city services for that. And I need an answer for
Right.
that still. I'm waiting. And my second question is, what do you think your greatest talent is that you could apply as a commissioner to make our county better? Those are my two questions.
Well, the first one about the property, the urban growth boundaries are stated because we're coming. And there was no annexations for like 12 years. And then finally there was one because it took so long to get the urban growth boundary reestablished. Because the state has all these requirements that we don't agree with, so it took a really long time. They have all these density issues that we don't agree with, of course.
Yeah,
And
their
so,
density agreements
when we
are wrong.
finally got it to where we only picked the areas that were easy to get services to, sewer, water, streetlights, that kind of thing, and to get police and fire to. And so there's gonna be properties like yours that doesn't seem to make sense, but were part of a group annexation because it was near something else. And maybe doesn't have the best transition possibilities from going from rural to urban. But that's part of it. We had that whole trouble on Allen Creek where that was 25 years, that was urban growth boundary, and then when we did annex it, they're like, why did you ever think of annexing this? Like, we told you for 25 years we might. And so you knew it might be coming, and there's not much flat land left, so we took it. And your area is a little different, but I know that that's just part of the march of the city. And I know some people appreciated it because there weren't fire or sheriff services in the county. And so when they did get in, I said, great, at least I can call a fire truck and I can call police.
Well, I can't call a fire truck for there, a cop for my
But if
deer.
if you if you wanted those services, you would have them, and if you wanted to develop, you'd have to develop city standards, and that's just part of the march of how cities grow, and it's not always fair.
Yeah, I went down
But
there, it
this-
cost me $10,000 just for site approval.
Right, but
$10,000,
this-
and I'd have to lay in a driveway.
See, in government
You
got
got
big.
screwed.
Yeah, I did.
But my biggest talent is, I think, not only understanding people, but getting to what they want. I can talk with a person and in 15 minutes, we can have a good conversation and end up, okay, now I understand where you're coming from, and I'm gonna take that to where I know it'll have some value. I have learned that I don't have to be the go-to person, I just have to know who to go to, and I have to try and understand what's going on. So it's that whole representative government thing. I think I've really got that over the last 10 years, that it's not me. You didn't elect me because you love my ideas. You elected me because I'll take your ideas and make them happen. Most people that want something, that's what we're gonna do. And it's finding that out, it's mining that out, is what I think is one of my best talents for this job, is that I could mine that out and then take it to the right person and say, hey, this is what I found. Like this stupid lightning rod thing that sounded really weird to me at the beginning. Now I started thinking, actually that doesn't sound that bad at all. Now who do you talk to, about that? And so you start wheels turning, okay, who can we talk to find that out? And I think that's a big part of what's missing in government is that communication. You promise a bunch of things when you're trying to get elected, or you promise a bunch of things when the courier's listening and writing things down, but then you go back in your office and play poker or return some emails or something, it's like, hey, you gotta get off your butt. This is a self-motivating job. You gotta get up off your butt every day and be self-motivating to try and fix these things because it's best for your community. Not because it's the job, not because you think you should, but because it's what's best and it's what gets you out of bed every day, so.
I
that's why
gotta
do it.
ask a question here.
Yeah.
I've waited this whole time to ask it. How could you, as mayor of Grants Pass, allow a low-income drug rehab housing unit to be pushed and crammed down the throats of the people in one of the best neighborhoods in Grants Pass?
That is
And
a
you
tough-
know it's gonna be nothing but problems.
Yeah.
And
It is.
you-
It's
you
not in
lost-
my
You
backyard.
lost a lot of votes on
And
that
everybody
one.
lost about 50 to 100,000 on their property. Now,
It is the
we
state
took
of
that
Oregon.
$50,000 out of that lawyer from Eugene who came
Right.
down. I was never so disappointed when I went to that county commission. I never had gone to any sort of a meeting before in my life.
City council.
City
council.
counseling. I'm
Right.
usually too busy working, which I should be doing
Right.
now, but I'm here.
I get that.
But I was disappointed at numerous things, just like I had no chance. The other opposing side had attorneys, they had HUD, they had
Yeah.
these liberal bleeding people wanting to help these drug addicts. I felt like I had no one, it was
Right.
like no one spoke up, they were a bunch of sheep. And then the next day I went to the Republican headquarters, like, where were you guys?
She beat up on us.
Well, I wasn't that hard on you, but where were you?
Well, and-
I mean,
Okay, certainly we need.
So I
to-
invited her
I
here to
need-
beat up on
The
you.
only way I could- I have.
You shanghaied his question, but I assume you guys are together.
But I have figured out the
They're
best
married.
fight I should have done against it, and I'm gonna maybe try it. I think I could possibly win on this angle, and I wouldn't even have to hire an attorney. But maybe I'll have the time, maybe I won't. Maybe, I think I might move back to Wisconsin or North
Stop
Dakota
it.
or Kentucky.
Stop it. See, that's one of my main issues with us not rounding this corner with grace when we had no funding for the sheriff, is that some of the good people are actually talking about leaving now. And
Oh,
they're
yeah.
serious about it, and that bothers me.
Yeah.
Because
Oh, yeah.
when the good people start leaving, I start getting upset. Hey,
Yeah,
what
I
are you
would.
leaving for? Well, I can't stand this and this and this. And I'm like, hey, me neither, but it's worth fighting for. Where are you gonna go? Well, I'll go to Arizona, or I'll go to Texas.
North Dakota.
Whatever, or Wisconsin.
I'm from North Dakota, you don't wanna
But,
go there.
but that affordable or accessible housing is something our county said there is a emergency. Our city started the task force to try and solve that problem, and so it is what we needed. Now,
No, it's not good.
out of 52 units, they do have 9 or 13, I can't remember which are drug rehab, the rest are not.
Why did they have
Um,
a counseling room?
The rest are not, and
Why did
so
they have a counseling room?
I don't know.
I live in part-
That's
we
part of
never
their
had a
business
counseling
model.
room.
It's so that when people come visit in their home and they don't have to go to an office.
A
But,
counselor? A
but they
counselor?
have good access to a high traffic street on Lincoln Road, right off of J. They satisfied every bit of criteria in our city development code. The state of Oregon says that you can't say no. And they have a lot of precedents for that. We have Maple Creek where we tried to fight them as a city council and lost. And didn't have to pay legal fees that time, but legal fees would have to be paid on this one if we did say no. And so, Maple Creek, yeah, it was over by Fruitvale. And so it's the same scenario, not my backyard, we need it, I'd rather have it closer to the city. I'd rather tear down 4 old houses and have it built on, J Street next to 4th or something, where there's a bunch of old houses that are at the end of their life. But that's where the project makes sense. Once they put that bookmark in and put their application in, you can't change the rules, of course. You can't move the goalposts on them. And so we're going to go back and look at the criteria for parking and stuff to try and limit the next one so that it has more parking. But it's a little bit of living in a blue state and a little bit of they satisfied all the criteria.
But they were attempting to solve a problem that you just said here a few minutes ago, that government shouldn't be the ones that we go to.
Right.
Do you think that contractors or private owners of property within the county or within the city wouldn't be incentivized if you got the hell out of their way and incentivized them to build housing to deal with the lack of housing that we have out? Do you think that they would not be incentivized by profit? I think they would.
It's the only, and that's why they're not doing it, because the profit's more in a house than it is in multi-family building. And plus, you can cut the ties quickly in a house. You can be done in 3 months and walk away, build the next house. So, but yes, we need those
some of
things.
this stuff in there.
So I think government should get out of the way by forgiving SDCs or forgiving permit fees or something. And especially if you're consolidating, like I was saying, an old neighborhood that was something a little closer to town, that's when government can get out of the way instead of saying, okay, you still owe us $20,000 for the streets and sewer out front. So no, we want to make it at least attractive enough so that the private sector can fix it. Government certainly should not be building homes like they do. They should not, unless you're in some super blight in Detroit or something. Maybe there's some project that works. I don't know. But in Grants Pass, we are not that city. We're not to build places for small houses for homeless or vagrants. We're not supposed to build or subsidize things as a government. I'm totally against that. But I think we can get out of the way as far as permits, SDCs, that kind of thing, and infrastructure to try and incentivize it. But I don't think government should build anything or try and manage anything. That's the wrong answer. That should always go private. I must be running out of time, yes?
Oh, yeah, you're over.
I know, I saw people leaving.
I have one question.
My breath.
But in the past week, Oregon Live reported that Oregon Town has the nation's 4th worst job market, study says. It says that Grants Pass isn't doing so well. How do you respond to that?
I think that stats are a little bit skewed in unemployment in Josephine County. I think that there's a lot of cash underpinnings and a lot of people double dipping in unemployment and taking cash. And I think that all those stats are something you have to look at in context. That I think you look at how businesses are sprucing up, how the empty buildings are filling up, how the county doesn't have as many empty homes, empty properties as it used to, and you can feel it because of the demand on electricians, the demand on construction workers, the demand on service personnel, like I said, the new businesses downtown. So I think we're doing better than they say we are, and I'm just that optimistic. I think that most stats are meant to try and say something, and when they say our area is that bad, we have a terrible motivation problem. We got parents that aren't motivated, and so their kids come out non-motivated, and then well, I could just make money selling drugs or being an idiot.
Yeah, there's plenty of jobs.
And so, yeah, there's plenty of help hiring, now hiring signs, but people can't find them. It took, not Applebee's, but where the Red Robin had to go out like 3 times to try and get enough employees to fill their restaurant. And it's like, that's ridiculous. That's people not wanting to work and not seeing the value of working hard and moving up the ladder like we used to. If you work hard every day, show up, you can actually move up. People are like, nah, I don't feel like showing up for $12 an hour. And it's like, dude, you gotta start somewhere.
The
But
welfare system empowers them not to
let me
work.
interrupt though. What they're talking about is, yeah, there's a lot of retail type jobs where you can flip burgers. But the problem is we don't have real employment here. We're not drawing in real businesses. And you know what we're gonna
true.
try and solve them? Taxes. And you know it because it gets voted on.
But they need to take that first job and learn whether they like that thing or not, and whether they could be a manager there, or whether they could become a supplier or whatever. They need to start those jobs and be willing to work their way up instead of saying, I just want the good job. I want to go to college and I want you to hire me at 55,000 and I'll see if I can do this. Well, no, you got to work your way up to that. Nobody starts at 55, dude. You got to start working hard and show me you got elbows that work and knees before I'm going to give you that opportunity to be manager or be part-time manager, or you'll see something while you're there and go, hey, maybe I'll go work for that guy. And I think that's what we're missing is the stepping
One more minute.
time. Then you're the last one.
Yeah, I want to clarify something. You talk about, excuse me, I get nervous when I talk to people. You talk about affordable housing. We had to sell our house. We sold our house, we couldn't find anything in the county. We're always lived in the county. So
Right.
we moved to the city, but we're moving back out to Selma next year. So Juan is not from the city. He's always lived in the county.
No, and I'm kind of personally against affordable housing being the
Well,
term.
no,
I want accessible housing,
No,
right?
I'm-
Whatever
no, I'm-
income level you're at, you should be able to find something.
Well, we couldn't find anything.
But the city and now the county is considering the ADU thing, right? Where you can do an accessory dwelling unit on your own property, you have your mother-in-law, your son,
No,
daughter,
I
live in it,
understand.
or rent it out. And now even my wife and I are thinking, that kind of sounds like a good idea because we have a double lot in town. But the county wants to adopt that too, so you could have, the way Americans live is a little different than they did back in the 70s and the 50s. And so I think you could tear down 2 houses and maybe build 4 smaller houses that were 140,000 apiece instead of 2 that were 270,000. And so it makes sense for the builder, but then it's like an incubator house for the young professional or the young couple that just got out of college. They can do a little starter house and then move into another house if they want to, or another community if they wanted to. But I think those are the kind of things we need to make more accessible to where they're cute. It's not some brick painted thing. It's like they're actually cute little houses that have the carport over there or whatever. You can park your stuff in a little storage unit, you know. And so that they were able to purchase something instead of rent something, because renting now is outrageous. That's more than the payment. And so they could have something affordable.
Yeah, we couldn't find anything, and
That's
we got those
crazy.
3 houses, 2 were in the W area, and
Well,
one
and
was not.
the same thing with me and my wife, of course. Anytime we're ready to sell our house, where are we going to go, right? Because we can't find the same value because everything moved. Dang it! It looks like we're stuck here forever. But we're happy with where our neighborhood is.
We're going back to the county.
I keep thinking there's a way to make money doing that, selling and moving, but I think that's for somebody else. I don't have that risk chip, I guess.
Okay.
All right, well, she
Thank
got the
you.
last question.
Thank you, thank
Thank
you.
you so much for letting me talk with you guys. Please, my phone number's on the city website, so you could get a hold of me anytime.